Addiction, the big terrible thing, is far too powerful to defeat alone, but together, one day at a time, we can beat it down. He told the world those words, but in the end, he couldn't beat it down himself. On October 28, 2023, Matthew Perry, the man who made us laugh as Chandler Bing, was found dead, alone in his hot tub. The coroner ruled his death the result of acute ketamine effects, with drowning and heart disease as contributing factors. But where the ketamine came from and why set off months of investigation, speculation, and controversy. Some called it relapse, others blamed therapy gone wrong, and darker theories pointed to dangerous supply from those who should have known better. One haunting question remains. How did a man who fought so hard to live end up dying alone? Chapter 1. Early years. To answer that, we have to go back to the beginning. Matthew Langford Perry was born on August 19th, 1969 in Williamstown, Massachusetts. His father, John Bennett Perry, was a charismatic actor and model known for TV commercials and film roles. His mother, Suzanne Morrison, was a Canadian journalist who would later become press secretary to Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. When Matthew was still an infant, his parents separated. His mother returned to her native Canada, and young Matthew grew up in Ottawa, far from the Hollywood spotlight. He excelled at tennis, showing extraordinary discipline and focus. By his early teens, he was ranked among Canada's top junior players. But beneath the competitive drive was a performer, a boy who loved making people laugh. By 15, he made a life-altering choice: to leave Canada for Los Angeles, living with his father and chasing the dream of acting. He attended the prestigious Buckley School, where his wit and charm made him popular. But he was also an outsider, a Canadian kid navigating the fast-moving social scene of Hollywood's youth. His big break came slowly, one guest role at a time. He appeared in Charles, In Charge, Silver Spoons, and Growing Pains. In 1988, still a teenager, he starred opposite River Phoenix in A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. But the real turning point was just around the corner. Chapter 2. Friends and Fame. In 1994, Matthew Perry, at just 24 years old, auditioned for a new NBC sitcom called Friends Like Us. It was a show about six 20-somethings finding their way in New York City. Matthew wasn't just good in the audition. He was unforgettable. His dry delivery, quick timing, and self-deprecating humor transformed the role of Chandler Bing from a supporting character into a fan favorite. The chemistry with his co-stars, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, Matt LeBlanc, and David Schwimmer, was instant. When Friends debuted in September 1994, it wasn't just a TV show. It became a cultural phenomenon. Chandler's sarcastic one-liners entered everyday conversation. Perry's mannerisms, the way he could turn a raised eyebrow into a punchline, made him one of the most recognizable comedic actors in the world. By the later seasons, Friends was drawing 25 million viewers a week, and each cast member was earning $1 million per episode, a record at the time. Perry used that fame to explore other roles, starring in films like Fool's Rush and opposite Salma Hayek, and the hit comedy The Whole Nine Yards with Bruce Willis. But even at the height of his career, Matthew carried a secret, the beginnings of a battle with addiction that would eventually overshadow the laughter. Chapter 3. The Big Terrible Thing. In 1997, while filming Fools Rush In, Matthew Perry was injured in a jet ski accident and prescribed Vicodin for pain, a moment he later called the beginning of the big terrible thing. What began as short-term relief quickly became a daily necessity. Within months, pills were no longer just for pain. They were the scaffolding that held up a life besieged by pressure, exhaustion, and expectation. Over the next 2 decades, Matthew's use expanded. Alcohol, stronger opioids like OxyContin, and cycles of binging and withdrawal. At his worst, he later admitted to taking dozens of pills a day, a pattern that ravaged his body and blurred his memory. He has said that there were seasons of Friends he could not remember filming. He would later watch those episodes and realize he had been functioning while under the influence. The physiological reality is stark. Opioids create tolerance. What once dulled pain becomes the new baseline. Without the drugs, the body and brain scream for normalcy. That tolerance drives people to steadily higher doses, which multiply risk. For Matthew, this meant repeated stints in treatment, more than a dozen rehab stays, and a life punctuated by hope and relapse. In 2018, the consequences of prolonged use reached crisis point. Years of opioid abuse contributed to a catastrophic medical emergency. His colon ruptured. He was rushed into emergency surgery, slipped into a coma for 2 weeks, and doctors gave him just a 2% chance of survival. Multiple surgeries and months of hospital care followed. He battled infections, physical rehabilitation, and the deep psychological aftermath of near death. Surviving that episode left him with visible scars and an even deeper resolve to fight the illness that had nearly taken him. But survival did not mean the end of struggle. Addiction is not a single event. It is a chronic disease with setbacks and remissions. Matthew's journey through recovery was marked by determination and frequent setbacks, each relapse a brutal reminder that the disease does not respect willpower or good intentions. Still, through interviews and in his memoir, he tried to demystify the process, describing the daily, granular work of staying sober, the meetings, the check-ins, the small rituals that keep a person tethered to life one day at a time. Chapter 4. A Man Who Wanted to Help. Despite his struggles, or maybe because of them, Matthew Perry became a fierce advocate for recovery. He turned his Malibu Beach home into a sober living facility called the Perry House. For men trying to rebuild their lives, it wasn't just a place to stay. It was a place to be understood. He used his fame to speak openly about addiction, stripping away the stigma. On talk shows, in interviews, even in casual conversations, he reminded people that addiction wasn't a moral failure. It was an illness, one that could happen to anyone. In 2022, he released his memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. It was raw, unfiltered, and unflinchingly honest. He admitted to spending over $9 million trying to get sober. He described the surgeries, the near-death moments, and the countless relapses. But more importantly, he offered hope, telling readers, "I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life, but the best thing about me is that if someone comes to me and says, 'I can't stop drinking, can you help me?' I can say yes. I know how to do that." For Matthew, helping others wasn't an afterthought. It was the thing he most wanted to be remembered for. Chapter 5. The Final Days. October 28th, 2023. It was a Saturday in Los Angeles. Warm, calm, the kind of day perfect for a quiet afternoon at home. Matthew Perry had spent the morning playing pickleball at a local club. Friends later said he seemed relaxed, even upbeat. After the game, he returned to his Pacific Palisades home, ordering a drink from his assistant before sending them out on an errand. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. Hours later, when the assistant returned, they found Matthew submerged in his jacuzzi, unresponsive, no signs of a struggle. There were no friends around, no family, No one to call his name. He had died alone. The news broke quickly. Social media exploded with grief. Fans around the world mourned the loss of the man who had made them laugh for 10 seasons as Chandler Bing. But to those who knew him, it wasn't just the loss of a beloved sitcom star. It was the loss of a man who had fought harder than most could imagine just to stay alive. Initial reports hinted at drowning. But as days passed, details emerged that painted a far more complicated picture. When the autopsy report was released weeks later, it stunned the public. Matthew Perry had died from the acute effects of ketamine. Ketamine, a powerful anesthetic, was known for its use in both surgery and mental health treatments. The autopsy noted he had been receiving ketamine infusions for depression and anxiety, but the coroner said the ketamine level at death was inconsistent with a single, recent clinical infusion. It was too much, too fast. Combined with the warm water of the jacuzzi, the drug likely slowed his breathing, clouded his consciousness, and eventually caused him to slip under the surface. The question shifted from what killed Matthew Perry to who supplied the fatal dose. In the months that followed, investigators traced a network of alleged suppliers. One figure emerged in headlines, a woman dubbed the Ketamine Queen by tabloids. Investigators later traced ketamine obtained outside regulated clinics. Several people, including medical professionals and an assistant, were charged. One defendant, Jasveen Sangha, the Ketamine Queen, has been indicted. Others have pleaded guilty or are awaiting trial. Perry's death was no longer seen as a private tragedy. It was a case, one that hinted at a wider problem in Hollywood. The easy accessibility of dangerous drugs, even to people who were trying to stay clean. Federal prosecutors eventually charged several individuals in connection with supplying the ketamine. But for fans, for friends, for family, those arrests did little to soften the blow. Perhaps the most haunting detail was how he left this world, quietly, without anyone by his side. Matthew Perry had dedicated years to helping others out of the darkness, yet in his final moments, he was alone in his own. In his memoir, he had once written, "When I die, I don't want friends to be the first thing that's mentioned. I want helping others to be the first thing that's mentioned." But tragically, when the headlines came, they carried his name alongside words like ketamine, investigation, found dead. The big terrible thing had taken him once more, not through alcohol or opioids this time, but through a drug meant to heal, misused in the wrong way at the wrong time. Chapter 6. Legacy and Final Message. Matthew Perry will forever be Chandler Bing to millions. That quick sarcasm, that perfectly timed pause. But the fuller measure of his life is found in the people he tried to save and the conversations he changed. After his near-fatal health crises, Perry used his platform to push a message he hoped would outlive his laugh lines. Addiction is an illness, not a moral failing, and recovery is a community project. He opened his home to men in recovery, supported treatment programs, and spoke bluntly about the money and time he had spent trying to get well. Those acts created real quiet ripples. Former residents and people he mentored attest that his presence, a phone call, an unexpected visit, a frank admission of his own relapse, made them try again when they might otherwise have walked away. Tributes after his death made the double nature of his legacy obvious. Co-stars and collaborators remembered the man who could light a scene with a glance, and then, off camera, ask how someone was really doing. Fans shared small, intimate stories, Chandler's lines played on late-night screens kept someone company through exams or a lonely shift at work. A joke in the middle of a sitcom eased the ache of a breakup. Those testimonies show how entertainment can be therapeutic, even accidental therapy. But tribute quickly turned into urgency. News cycles and later investigations raised questions about the safety of certain treatments when they leave supervised clinical environments. Matthew's death prompted renewed calls for better regulation of novel therapies, clearer guidelines for at-home use, and improved access to supervised care, especially for people with complex histories of substance use and medical conditions. In the end, Matthew's wish to be remembered for helping others, not only for friends, began to come true. His candidness pushed conversations about relapse, about the need for compassion, and about structural gaps in addiction care into the public sphere. Families talked earlier. Friends checked in more often. Some institutions re-examined their policies around emerging therapies. If we are to honor him, the simplest acts matter. Reach out to a friend who seems withdrawn. Learn the signs of overdose. Support organizations that expand access to supervised, evidence-based treatment. Matthew's life was messy and brilliant and human, and his last request was practical and humble. Help others, one day at a time. His story is a reminder that laughter can coexist with pain, and that the bravest thing is often to ask for help, and to stay present for someone who asks. Let his life inspire us to check in on each other, to listen without judgment, to lend a hand when it's needed most. Because if there's one thing Matthew Perry taught us, it's that you can be the reason someone else decides to stay. Thanks for watching. If this video meant something to you, please subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment. It helps this story reach people who might need it.